The Pentagon has confirmed the authenticity of the newly leaked video and images showing those multiple UFO sightings by the U.S. Navy personnel as the government prepares now to release a highly anticipated first of its kind report of UFOs this summer. This night vision video shows 3 pyramid-shaped UFOs flying over the USS Russell off the coast of California in July of 2019. They reportedly hovered just 700 feet above the stern of the Navy destroyer. Other cell phone images taken by a Navy pilot flying near Australia in March 2019 show 3 unidentified crafts reportedly performing extraordinary capabilities, like staying stationary in high winds. The Pentagon confirmed U.S. Navy personnel captured the images, and the incidents are under investigation.
My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating. Nickel 6-1 Tango, Roger, Roger. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
If you can write a general that long where we're at, and the number of contacts you got, the course and speed meters off them.
Over a period of hours, crew members on the USS Omaha, which is located in the center of this radar screen, monitored the approach of the unknown objects, as many as 14 at one point, all around the ship. 2 different radar systems watched the objects and estimated their speed.
Track 781 just sped up to 46 knots, 50 knots, closing in. Oh, actually 38 knots.
That one's pretty much perfectly 000 relative, right?
Yeah.
Corbell obtained the images from sources he declines to identify. The Pentagon's UAP task force considers the Omaha spheres to be true unknowns. The ships that were under observation by the unknowns were unable to track where they came from or where they disappeared to. The Omaha sphere appears to have vanished into the ocean.
What? Splashed.
At that point, it also vanished from all sensors. In one video snippet, 9 of the objects were seen around the Omaha, but 2 of them dropped off, somehow invisible to 2 radar systems.
And it supports the hypothesis that these are not just a balloon dropping into the water, or it's not something that is easily explained. These are true unidentifieds in mass number, and we'll talk more about that, but that's what we're showing people, where you have radar data that goes with FLIR data, what everybody has been belly aching for. So here you go.
If these are foreign-made high-tech drones, how do they fly with no wings, rotors, or detectable exhaust? Do they possess some sort of cloaking ability? The sensor data, combined with the video images, raises difficult questions. The video of the radar screens consists of 4 clips that were spliced together to show that this went on over a period of time. Today, less than 4 hours after that video was made public by us, a Pentagon spokesperson confirmed it is legit, that it was recorded by Navy personnel and is in the hands of the UAP task force. That's the unit created to prepare a report for Congress that is due next month.
John, you have seen in your role the most intelligence that anybody has seen other than the president as the director of national intelligence. And I've been wanting to ask you this next question for a while. I want to ask you about UFOs, unidentified flying objects. The Pentagon is going to come out with a report by June 1st. And in the $2.3 trillion omnibus appropriations legislation passed in January, it includes the Intelligence Authorization Act, money for the Pentagon to continue investigating UFOs. John, we're going to get this report June 1st. Can you tell us, have unidentified flying objects been seen?
Well, sure. We have lots of reports about what we call unidentified aerial phenomenon. And this actually is a program that's been in place for a few years in terms of a task force that has been there under the National Defense Authorization Act. But as you correctly point out, Maria, there's now a report that will be issued by the Pentagon, by the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence. I actually wanted to get this information out and declassified before I left office, but we weren't able to get it down into an unclassified format that we could talk about quickly enough. But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those. We don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen. And, when that information becomes declassified, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Can you tell us where it was seen?
Actually, all over the world. There have been sightings all over the world. And when we talk about sightings, the other thing I will tell you is it's not just a pilot or just a satellite or some intelligence collection. Usually we have multiple sensors that are picking up these things. And so, again, some of this are just they're unexplained phenomenon. There's actually quite a few more than have been made public.
Commander David Fravor spent 18 years as a naval aviator, a pilot. In 2004, he had an unforgettable encounter with an aircraft he said was defying the laws of physics. Former Commander Fravor joins us tonight. Thanks a lot for coming on tonight. Tell us what you saw.
Well, we had launched on a routine training mission. When we joined up, we were told that the event was going to be canceled and that we have real-world tasking, and we were sent out to the west. Now, take in mind that this has taken place about 100 miles southwest of San Diego, between San Diego and Ensenada, Mexico, on a clear, perfect day, blue waters. We get out to the spot where they tell us it's at. We start looking around, and both airplanes see a disturbance in the water and a white 40-foot long tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water, going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing. So as we drive around in a clockwise flow, we get to about the 9 o'clock position, and I said, well, I'm going to go down and check it out, and the other jet is going to stay high. So as we go down, when we get to the 12 o'clock position, it starts to mirror us. So it's in a clockwise flow, and it's on the opposite side of the circle from us. And we continue this. It's in a climb, we're in a descent, we're getting a great look at it. This whole thing takes about probably up to 5 minutes from the time we show up. I get over to the 8 o'clock position, it's at about the 2 o'clock position, and I decide I'm going to go and see what it is, and it's about 2,000 feet below me. And I cut across the circle, and as I get within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerates to the south in about 2 seconds and disappears.
What would you estimate the speed?
Oh, well above supersonic. It like a bullet out of a gun, it took off.
So from what you know about aerodynamics, mechanics, physics, should this be possible, what you saw?
Not with the technology that we have today. Not at all.
Even now, even 13 years later, is there anything that you know of capable of this kind of behavior?
No, there's nothing I know of. I mean, when we saw the video with the IR, it has no exhaust, no discernible things of anything form of propulsion. And this thing came from a dead hover over the water, just kind of moving around, to a climb up to about 12,000 feet to rapidly accelerating away in a climb, and in less than 2 seconds it was gone. And you figure you're talking 50 miles of visibility, and you can easily see an object that size easily out to 10 miles, and it just disappeared in seconds.
What would be the effects on a human pilot of the G-forces involved in that altitude change?
Well, the altitude wouldn't be bad. It would be the acceleration of the object.
That's right.
Honestly, I wanted to fly it.
Yeah,
but, I bet. Talking to some physicists, they don't think the human body could handle that kind of force with that acceleration.
It doesn't sound like the human body could. So bottom line, what do you think this was?
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
3 more U.S. senators received a classified briefing about UFOs at the Pentagon, or in current lingo, unidentified aerial phenomena. You may have heard that pilots and other military personnel have been reporting these kinds of sightings for years. A couple weeks ago, the Department of Defense even released footage shot by a Navy Super Hornet pilot. But you may not have known that back in 2007, Congress directed the Pentagon to set up a $22 million search for the truth. And Tom Foreman is with me more on the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. So, Tom, talk to me about these senators getting the classified briefings on UFOs.
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. It's easy to laugh at this, easy to think it's silly or it's just a bunch of hokum out there. But Senator Mark Warner, who is the vice chair of the Intelligence Committee, said, look, I think it's important. He told us just this afternoon, I think it's important that the military is taking this more seriously now than they did in the past. So what are they taking seriously? Those videos you were talking about relate to a couple of different sightings we're talking about. In 2004, there was one called the Tic Tac sighting. They called it that because they said it looked like a Tic Tac flying out there very close to the water on the West Coast. And then more recently, there were some out on the East Coast that people were talking about, 2014, 2015, where these pilots were describing seeing these things up to 30,000 feet in the air, flying at extraordinary speeds, hypersonic, well over the speed of sound, changing direction in the most astonishing ways, and seemingly defying the laws of physics. Listen to what one of these pilots had to say.
No distinct wings, no distinct tail, no distinct exhaust. It seemed like they were aware of our presence because they would actively move around us.
So that's what has everyone excited here. These reports, the release of these videos, and you mentioned the program. That was originally started by Senator Harry Reid.
The federal government all these years has covered up, put brake pads on everything, stopped it. I think it's very, very bad for our country.
Are you saying that there's some evidence that still hasn't seen the light of day?
I'm saying most of it hasn't seen the light of day.
The late 2019 incident essentially involved a U.S. carrier strike group, as with the incident in 2004 and 15, doing its workups on pre-deployment, preparing to go abroad and do the missions that the Navy are assigned. And the pilots are flying off the coast, off the Atlantic seaboard, and see essentially a black triangle, white sort of indicator lights on its peripheral tips coming out of the water very quickly, and then accelerating at extremely high speed at about a 90-degree angle. And one of the pilots took a photo, very good photo, I'm told, by multiple sources on his iPhone. And myself and Tim McMillan, who really led the charge in this investigation, have sort of tied it down. So I think the real point of note on this is that this phenomenon, whatever it is, continues to occur.
It came out of the water. So expound on that a little bit. There have been over the years a number of reports of unidentified underwater vehicles moving in ways that don't make any sense at all. Tell us what you know about that.
Because they move at hundreds of knots under the water, or at least they can, and they maneuver in ways that would essentially render a submarine or an aircraft carrier or any, quite frankly, military warship extremely vulnerable to attack. And the capabilities, because of what we understand in terms of friction under the water, that these things manifest. And then what they do in the air as well, you know, this is some special stuff, whatever it is.
Well, a bullet doesn't travel hundreds of knots an hour. an hour underwater for long. I mean, I don't think any human-made object ever has. We've never imagined something like that. So what could be the explanation?
The Chilean government agency which investigates UFOs or unidentified aerial phenomenon has declassified and released never-before-seen video from 2014 showing a mysterious flying object of which they suggest could have been a UFO. According to a press release from the agency, a Navy helicopter spotted the unidentifiable object while patrolling a coastal region near Santiago, Chile. The unknown object was seen flying at a constant speed, similar to that of the helicopter, and moving forward. The pilot tried several times to communicate with the object, but he received no reply. Air traffic control failed to detect any flying objects on radar. In 2 instances, the object ejected some type of gas or liquid with high thermal tracking. Captured on video, you can see a massive plume of material trailing behind the object. Moments later, a second ejection of the unspecified discharge. The flying object was visible for about 10 minutes before disappearing into the clouds without a trace. Air Force photo analysts confirmed that the 3-dimensional object was real, with volume and showcased control in its movements. They established that there was no evidence of hoaxing or alteration of the video by any computer application in the editing and processing of the images. Officials also ruled out a bird or flying insect, a drone, parachute, or a hang glider. After an extensive study, the Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena agreed it had all the characteristics to be classified as an unidentified aerial phenomenon.
One astrophysicist who has worked for the Pentagon's UFO program since 2007 told the New York Times that he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency about retrievals from, quote, off-world vehicles not made on this earth. Joining me now is Christopher Mellon. He served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence during the Bill Clinton and George W. Bush administrations. Chris, I sense that there has been a sea change recently in the way in which these reports are being carried and covered. What accounts for it? What has gone on recently?
You're absolutely right, and a good example of this sea change is the fact that none other than Scientific American itself has published an article saying the subject ought to be taken seriously and investigated by the scientific community. I think this change is largely primarily a result of the fact that the Defense Department and the Navy themselves have stood up and publicly acknowledged that this phenomenon is real, that this is happening, that our Navy pilots are encountering these vehicles. And so that imparts a credibility that simply did not exist prior to that time.
Do you believe that there are objects in our possession, broadly defined our possession, that are from something other than this Earth?
What I will say about that is that I think that assertion should be taken seriously.
This is not a United States issue. Are there other countries that have taken a lead in the exploration of this subject?
Absolutely. In fact, we're behind several other countries. France, for many years, has had an official process involving their national security forces and police forces. Every year they examine a number of cases and bring in outside scientists. A lot of that information is public. My colleague Lou Elizondo has made trips both to Italy and South America, as well as a lot of information from current and former U.S. military personnel and their experiences. But you're absolutely right. This is not unique to the United States. And further, our military personnel have similar experiences when they're deployed abroad in the Middle East and Afghanistan and elsewhere. So by all accounts, it is definitely a worldwide phenomenon.
A final question. Can technology alone account for what you and I are discussing? It occurs to me that by day, I make my living by speaking on Sirius XM, and my voice is bouncing across the United States on a satellite. I assume right now this conversation is doing likewise. There's a lot of stuff up in the atmosphere that didn't used to be there. Can that be an explanation, or is that too simplistic?
I do believe it's too simplistic. And the reason I say that is because in some of these cases, we have information from multiple radar systems, infrared systems, multiple naval personnel on the ground and in the air. And we're tracking these objects, performing maneuvers that clearly indicate they're under intelligent control. They're responding to our aircraft. They're out maneuvering them. And they're doing things that are far beyond any capability we possess.
Former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, the other night on Fox News, where I asked him about this upcoming Pentagon report, which you, of course, have commissioned or encouraged to have a report on these unidentified objects. Here's John Ratcliffe with me last week. I've got to get your reaction to what's taking place. Have unidentified flying objects been seen?
Well, sure. We have lots of reports about what we call unidentified aerial phenomenon. There are a lot more sightings than have been made public.
So, Senator, what about that? What can you tell us about UFOs?
Well, we have things flying over military installations, over military exercises, and other places, and we don't know what it is. It isn't ours. It isn't anything that's registered with the FAA, and in many cases exhibits attributes of things we've never seen, technology, the kinds of technology we haven't seen before, or at least that's what it seems like. It's very simple. There are things flying over national security installations. We don't know who they are. We don't know what it is. It isn't ours. We need to find out.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, from my standpoint, when I heard John Ratcliffe talk about that, I went and I looked up what you've said about the Pentagon report coming up June 1st. What do you think we're going to learn from that Pentagon report on June 1st?
Well, first, I'm not sure they're going to come in on time, to be honest with you, because they miss a lot of deadlines in government on these sorts of things. But we'll get a report at some point.
Last month contains a provision that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. It directs the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of other agencies, to disclose what they know about UFOs within 180 days. So what are they going to tell us? Nick Pope is an expert on this subject. He's former UK Minister of Defense. He's an official of the UK Ministry of Defense. He joins us tonight. Nick, thanks so much for coming on. What do you think we're likely to learn? Will they obey is the first question. Will they actually tell us what they know? And if they do, what will they tell us?
Well, this is going to be a very interesting year for UFOs, that's for sure, Tucker. And yes, they will definitely have to produce this report within 180 days, so we can get this by late June. It has to be unclassified, but can have a classified annex. So the answer, what the public will get, maybe not a lot, but what the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee will get, hopefully a whole lot more, and hopefully some answers to these questions that we've been asking for months now. What is going on in our airspace? What has the US Navy been encountering? And what is it that has been in these classified briefings that we know some senators have already had? Just before Christmas, there were some leaks. Sitting in Office of Naval Intelligence is an organization called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. They're probably the ones drafting this report. Some leaks suggest they have not ruled out the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Has the president been briefed on the unidentified aerial phenomena report, and is he satisfied with the conclusions? Does he want additional work in that space?
Because it's Friday, it's always a little wacky on Friday. So let me first say that we know there have been press reports about the status of this report. This is a DoD report, and so I would certainly refer to them on the status of the report. Their work with ODNI is ongoing. The team's actively working on it, but it's not at a conclusion phase, as I understand, and as I think they've commented from their building. I will say that we take reports of incursions into our airspace by any aircraft, identified or unidentified, very seriously, and investigate each one. Safety and security of our personnel, of our operations, are of paramount concern. There's a requirement to put out this report, and certainly our appropriate teams are working on finalizing it.
Was the president briefed on it, or has he
I
been
don't have
briefed
any update on internal briefings, no.
This week, details of a new government report on unexplained aerial phenomena came out. Intelligence officials found no evidence that these UAPs or UFOs are alien spacecraft, but they also didn't completely rule it out. They also couldn't offer an explanation about what they actually are.
What do you believe now that you didn't believe 5 years ago?
Well, I came into the job as a skeptic, but I was convinced by the sheer weight of evidence, the sightings, the radar evidence, all that sort of thing, that some of these things that we see in the sky and call UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin.
What is going on? What do you think these people and these craft are doing?
That's the difficult question. It's very difficult to say because although the evidence is convincing, it's often contradictory. Some people say that it bears the hallmarks of some sort of reconnaissance exercise. Certainly, these sightings have been going on for many, many years. Lots of reliable witnesses, many military personnel citing them, but yet no open, outright contact. So that does tend to suggest that they are trying to keep themselves hidden.
What was it about your own role in the Ministry of Defence that made you more certain that this was going on? Was there anything there that you found out that gave rise to your conviction that these craft and these extraterrestrial people existed?
Well, yes, of course. Working in the Ministry of Defence, I had access to all sorts of inside data, and when I was conducting my investigations, I would liaise with Royal Air Force officers, I could impound radar tapes, I could go and speak to witnesses, I could speak to the Royal Observatory at Greenwich. I could make all sorts of checks to try and get to the bottom of these sightings, checks which really civilian UFO researchers were not able to make. Well, I think it's absolutely clear that structured craft of unknown origin have and continue to penetrate the UK air defence region. This has happened on a number of occasions. We've had radar evidence. On some occasions, we've had aircraft scrambled. And it seems to me that although we can't absolutely say what these things are, but given that they are penetrating our air defences, we have to say there's a potential threat until we can say that there is no.
Give us an example. I mean, give us an example. Take one example of some event which, with your inside knowledge, you can persuade us really was an unidentified flying object, something from outer space.
In March of 1993, we had a case where numerous RAF personnel and police officers reported a craft over Britain. It was seen by the Guard Patrol at RAF RAF Cosford. Then it was seen by the meteorological officer at RAF Shawbury. It was firing a beam of light down at the countryside. It was emitting a low hum. This was not some aircraft light seen from an unusual angle. This was a craft. It had got through our air defences, and that must be a matter of defence significance.
One particular night, we just finished our refueling mission. London Control called us and asked us if we would intercept a UFO over the center of England, roughly in the Stonehenge, Oxford area. We're up at 33,000 feet, and the UFO was down at about 1,000 feet. We dove on it. Eventually, we got up to close to it, and we could see what looked like a cruise ship out at sea with all the lights and everything. Got about a mile from it, and it went up into space. London Control said, you can continue on with your mission. Apparently, Prince Philip felt it was very important. We were invited to dinner at the Officers Club where he was a speaker, and he knew all about the fact that we had chased the UFO. He kind of made me a believer in a sense. I had seen them personally, of course, before that, but when someone of his stature indicates that they're real and probably from another planet, it's very convincing.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles I. Halt. I retired from the U.S. Air Force in 1991 as a colonel. During my military career, I was base commander of 2 large installations, and at the time of my retirement, I was in the Department of Defense Inspector General's office with total inspection oversight of all services and all service agencies. In 1980, I was reassigned from the Pentagon to RAF Bentwaters as a deputy base commander. At that time, Bentwaters was one of the largest tactical fighter wings in the world. We had the 2 base complex, Woodbridge and Bentwaters in England, and 4 FOLs in Germany, and 2 additional standby bases. In December 1980, early in the morning, several of our security policemen discovered strange lights in the forest in East Anglia, just outside the back gate of RAF Woodbridge. 3 patrolmen, Sergeant Peniston, Airman Burrows, and Airman Cabanasac, actually were dispatched into the forest and approached a craft. They reported it being triangular, approximately 3 meters on a side, dark metallic in appearance with strange markings. They observed it for a period of time, and it very quickly and silently vanished at high speed. Initially, I was not aware of all the details. I was only told of strange lights, and I was sure there was a logical explanation. 2 nights later at the family Christmas party, we were interrupted. The on-duty flight commander for the Security Police Squadron, Lieutenant Bruce England, came and approached the base commander and I. He was white as a sheet. He said, "It's back." We said, "What's back?" He said, "The UFO." Well, we still were, I should say, non-believers at that point. Since my boss had to do the presentations, I was tasked, unfortunately, to investigate. So I went home and changed clothes, and I really expected to find a logical explanation. I took several security policemen with me, a disaster preparedness NCO who took an APN-27, a Geiger counter, and a camera. I also had my small cassette recorder I carried everywhere when I was on duty. I was taken to the supposed site. We found indentations approximately 1.5 inches deep, approximately 6 to 8 feet on a side, and radiation of 8 to 9 times normal background radiation. Not enough to be dangerous to somebody, but significant. We also found broken branches on the trees. While we were milling around trying to make sense of the whole thing, one of the individuals with me suddenly spotted something. Off through the forest was a bright, glowing object. The best way I can describe it, it looked like an eye. It was bright red with a dark center. It appeared to be winking. It would sort of wink. It was shedding something like molten metal. It was dripping off it. It silently moved through the trees, avoiding any contact. It bobbed up and down, and at one point it actually approached us. We tried to get closer. It receded out into the field, beyond the forest, and silently exploded into 5 white objects. Gone. So we went out into the field looking for any evidence, because something had apparently been falling off it, and we found nothing. But while we were searching around in the field, one of the people with me noticed some objects in the sky to the north. There were 3 or 4 objects in the north, brightly colored, changing from elliptical to round, and moving at very high speed and sharp angular movements as though they were doing a grid search. While we were watching them, somebody else noticed to the south there were 2 objects just sort of hovering in the sky. One object approached us at very high speed, best guess is 3,000 to 5,000 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood, stopped directly overhead and sent down a concentrated beam at our feet. It was about 1 foot in diameter. The best way I can equate it is sort of a laser beam. We stood there in awe. Was this a warning? Was this an attempt to communicate? Was this a weapon or just a probe? Just as suddenly as it appeared, click, it disappeared. We stood there, really concerned. About that time, we noticed the other object to the south was sending down beams, about a mile and a half away over Woodbridge Base. We had 3 different radios with us, the police radio, the security police radio, and I had the command net. All 3 radios were functional and we were talking to control centers. They were constantly breaking up and we had great difficulties communicating, but we were able to discern that on the police and security net that some of those beams were either falling into or near the weapons storage area, and there's a great deal of concern. It really bothered me at the time. Every time something of significance happened that night, I kind of clicked on my little tape recorder and recorded it so I'd have a record of it for the next day. I also found out later that the tower operator, both the tower operators at Bentwaters saw an object and picked it up on their Bright 2 radar and watched it. I found out that the tower operator in the weapons storage area actually saw something, as did a command who was working there and saw it go down into the forest near us. And also several other people around the base saw it. It's kind of interesting. What did we see? I have no idea what we saw that night. I do know it was under intelligent control, and in my personal opinion, it was either from another dimension or extraterrestrial.
You saw a light where? Right at this position here, straight ahead, in between the there it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash right there. So there it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. So can I get some? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out. I'm going to switch off. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from the site. Is it back again? Yes, sir. Oh, that's the flashlight set. Let's move out to the edge of the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if we can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals have gotten quiet now. Yeah, we're heading about 110 to 120 degrees from the site out through to the clearing now. Still getting a reading on the meter. About 2 clicks. Maybe count 3 to 4 clicks. Getting stronger. Now it's coming up. Hold on. There we go. About approximately 4 foot off the ground. Compass set to 110 degrees. All right, just turn the meter off. Gotta say that again. About 4 feet off the ground, about 110 degrees, getting a reading of about 4 clicks. Yes, sir. Yeah, but excuse me. No, it's done. No, it's done. I think it's something other than the ground. I think it's something variable here. Tree right over. We just spotted the first night bird we've seen. We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everything else is just deathly calm. There is no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been. Yellow. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left. Yeah, definitely moving left. Two lights. One light to the front, okay. One light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. Here's something very, very strange. Get the headset on and see if it gets any stronger. Okay. Give us your radar. Notation that this is on a beta reading, too. It's on a beta reading? Beta okay. Still has been removed. Okay. Pieces are falling off it again. It just moved to the right. Yeah. Off to the right. Strange. Oh, well, why go left? Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. Do you want to do it without lights? Let's do it carefully. Come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. And the flash is so bright to the star scope that it almost burns your eye. We passed the farmer's house and across in the next field. Now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash. We just crossed the creek, and we're getting what kind of readings now? Getting 3 good clicks on the meter, and we're seeing strange lights in the sky. At 244, we're at the far side of the second farmer's field, and made sighting again about 110 degrees. This looks like it's clear out to the coast. It's right on the horizon. Moves about a bit and flashes from time to time. Still steady or red in color. Also, after negative readings in the cellular field, we're picking up slight readings, 4 or 5 clicks now on the meter. 305, we see strange strobe-like flashes to the rather sporadic, but there's definitely something, some kind of phenomenon. 305 at about 10 degrees horizon directly north. We've got 2 strange objects, half moon shape, with colored lights on them. But gets to be about 5 to 10 miles out, maybe less. The half moons have now turned into full circles. If there was an eclipse or something there for a minute or two. 315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving, one's moving away from us. Moving out fast. Yeah, they're both heading north. So here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. 330, and the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. We're turning around and heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground. 400 hours, one object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down this area.
Woodbridge is about 95 miles northeast of London in Suffolk County, not far from the North Sea. In December 1980, 20-year-old U.S. Air Force Airman First Class John Burroughs had been stationed at RAF Bentwater since July 1979. He would turn out to be the only known serviceman there to be exposed twice and close up to colorful, unidentified aerial phenomena and its non-ionizing radiations. The first time was on December 26, 1980, around 3 a.m., and the second time was 2 nights later, around 4 a.m. on December 28th in Rendlesham Forest near the Woodbridge side of the base. But for the past 35 years, John has never been able to clearly remember what happened. Probably because, as we are learning, the UAP radiation manipulated his and others' minds in mysterious ways. It all started after midnight on December 26, 1980, when Airman First Class Burroughs was on law enforcement duty at RAF Woodbridge's East Gate that is marked by the orange circle here in this aerial map. The Bentwaters and Woodbridge Weapons Storage Areas, abbreviated WSA, on both sides, UK and American side, Bentwaters and Woodbridge, they both contained highly classified nuclear weapons, even if never publicly acknowledged by either the UK or the US. With Airman Burroughs was Staff Sergeant Bud Steffens, who was law enforcement supervisor that night. Not far from the East Gate, Sergeant Steffens and Airman Burroughs saw strange blue, orange, red, and white lights hovering at treetop level in Rendlesham Forest. So Burroughs and Steffens drove their patrol car out the East Gate on a road along the trees. The red, orange, and blue lights seemed closer than before, joined by a larger white light that appeared to move along the edge of the forest as if pacing their car and slowly moving closer to them. John Burroughs told me he was overwhelmed with the feeling that something was not right. He and Steffens drove back to the East Gate. They phoned a Sergeant McCabe to report what had been happening, and McCabe alerted Central Security Control. CSC had contacted Heathrow Tower in London, and they were told Heathrow radar did have one or more unidentified aerial objects over the Woodbridge region that traveled rapidly down toward the base. That first high strangeness night of December 26, 1980, Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston was a duty supervisor in security at RAF Woodbridge. So after the radar alert from Heathrow, Sergeant Peniston drove to the East Gate in a truck with newly assigned Airman First Class Edward Cavansack to see for himself what was happening. Airman John Burroughs joined Cavansack and Sergeant Peniston, and the three men drove out of the East Gate onto the logging road that ran through the Rendlesham Forest where Burroughs and Steffens had been earlier. Peniston said the road was full of potholes and was so frozen that it was hard to drive the truck. And that is why they stopped here. Peniston is responsible for these orange lines. He thinks that they stopped here, and then he and John started going through the forest here that this is where the encounter was, and back here where that orange line stops is where Kvansak is waiting in the truck. Pennison said that he and John Burroughs, going through the forest, running after lights, commenting how can the lights be going through the trees so fast because the trees were so close together, that Pennison says he encountered a triangular craft that left tripod imprints in the forest ground. John Burroughs later wrote in his report, quote, "All three of us hit the ground, and whatever it was, it started moving back toward this open field," close quote. After that, there was a lot of radio interference, and it was decided that Kvansak should stay with the truck to relay communications, while Pennison and Burroughs continued walking deeper into the woods, following the colorful lights moving through the trees. Burroughs and Pennison also described feeling hair on their arms and back of their necks stand up, like they were in the electrostatic atmosphere of a thunderstorm, but it was a clear, cold, starry December night. According to Sergeant Penniston's notebook shown here and his official written report, he and Airman John Burroughs got to within close distance of a highly strange triangular-shaped craft on the ground about 10 feet long and 6.5 feet high. According to Sergeant Penniston, the black triangle emerged out of a blast of white light. Strangely, John Burroughs to this day does not remember seeing Jim Penniston near such a craft. But John also knows his mind has been blocked since that night when he thinks about the red, blue, orange, and white lights. And what neither of those men knew, or Kvansak, was that in Central Security Control, they lost radio contact for 45 to 55 minutes. It was a missing time period, if you want to put it that way, for the whole base, because they did not know what had happened to these three men who left the base to walk into civilian Rendlesham Forest after lights. And as we've seen in Project Condign, close exposure to UAP non-ionizing radiation can injure human tissues and affect minds, including memory erasure in those words I showed you a few minutes ago. Back then, after his two encounters with the mysterious colorful lights, John Burroughs was able to make this sketch of what he remembered about the first strange lights in the handwritten statement that he turned in to RAF Bentwater's Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. Years later, in 2010, John worked with a computer graphics illustrator to produce this computer impression of the red, orange, blue, and white lights. John also knew that there were rumors on the base that he had, quote, jumped up on or had been taken up in a UFO that night. I'm now going to show you brief excerpts from a nearly 30-year-old videotape from November 11th, 1988, during a hypnosis session 8 years after the UAP UFOs were in Rendlesham Forest. John Burroughs speaks very rapidly about being with Staff Sergeant Penniston around 3 a.m. on December 26th as they approached the strange aerial lights in Rendlesham Forest. And in spite of the videotape's deterioration, John's very clear words and rapid are perhaps as close as any of us will ever be to what he experienced so near a phenomenon that is now linked to non-ionizing radiation that can damage human tissues and manipulate human minds. John is reliving his first night's encounter on December 26th as he was next to Staff Sergeant Jim Penniston in Rendlesham Forest.
Light, a weird oval-shaped light. It's hovering, it's strobing.
Flashing back and forth, flashing on and off.
It's white, but there's lights below it. There's little lights below it. There's the orange lights. There's the red lights. It's like sun. It's like the sun, but it's not shaped like the sun. It's like an oval-shaped thing, and it's pulsating.
How far away is it?
10 feet, maybe 15.
How big is it?
I don't know. It keeps changing. It keeps changing.
Changing
The lights are pulsating. It's hard to judge. It's hard to judge. It's there. It's there now. It's moving back. It's moving back. It's moving back.
Away from you?
It's moving away. It's moving. It's up. It's up in the air. It's up in the air.
How
It's
high?
moving back. It's moving back. It's up through the trees. It's moving back. It's moving back. Now it's in the distance, but it's there. It's down low again. How did it get through the trees? I don't know. I don't know. Well, we'll follow it. Call him. Tell him. We're going to follow it. We got to follow it. I can't reach him on the radio. The hell with the radio. Put it down. We don't need it. Put it in your Put it in your pocket. Let's go. Let's go. We don't care what they say. We've got to find out. Something's there. We got to find out. Let's go. Spread out more. Okay. Let's go. Okay. Move. Okay. Be careful. I feel weird. I feel tingly. I feel tingly. We all feel tingly. We all got to know. We got to know. Is it a UFO, John? I don't know. What is the UFO? What is it? I don't know. It's not real. We can hear humming now. The ground's shaking. This is weird. Why didn't we bring our guns? Could it be drawn into us? I feel like I'm being pulled. Something's pulling me. Oh, God. Sergeant Pennison, what's going on? I don't know. It's pulling it towards us. Oh, look, it just changed again. It's small. Now it's moving back. Now it's moving back. Look, look how fast it moved back. Look, it's a quarter mile back now. Let's start running. We can't let it get away from us. We got to know where it is. Okay, well, it's gone. Okay, security control, return to base. ETA back, I don't know. 30 minutes, hour, unknown. Okay, keep in radio contact. Okay, and we just start walking back. And I'm talking to him.
Going with you.
I'm talking. Sergeant Pennison and I and Bananchek, we're walking. Now we're walking back. Okay, what was it? I don't know. John, what do you think it is? I don't know. Do I look scared? You look pale. I don't know what I saw, John. I think it was a UFO. I don't know. I don't want to believe what I saw. He goes, John, it seemed like we were there and all of a sudden we're here. Why couldn't we get radio contact with them? We should have been able to. There was repeater stations, there were towers, but we lost contact with them. I don't know. Well, what are we going to do? I don't know. Let's just see what happens when we get back. So we're walking, and it's cold, and we're walking, and we come across a creek that we don't even remember crossing. Do you remember this, John? No, I don't remember this. Do you remember that, John? No, I don't remember that. Well, how did we get there? I don't know. Could we have been moved by it? Could something have picked us off the ground? I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. No, the British police are there. The shift commander's there. The flight chief, the security flight chief's there. Our flight chief's there. There's other law enforcement patrols there. Everybody was concerned. They go, we've lost contact with you for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. We didn't know where you were. We saw, the WSA tower saw all kinds of lights in the air. They thought they saw something being beamed up in the air, but they weren't sure. They thought we lost you, John. We thought we lost you guys. Well, what happened? We don't know. So then we meet up with our flight chief and the shift commander and my flight chief. Sergeant Turner goes, John, are you okay? Yeah. We thought we lost you guys. What do you mean? Well, nothing was right, John. We completely lost you. We completely lost contact with you. There were other patrols down at the gate. They said they saw weird happenings. They said they saw something above the tree level. They said they thought they saw something being lifted off the ground. And they said they thought that you were gone. They said that they thought we had lost you. They thought something had taken you. And the shift commander goes, well, gentlemen, I've got some interesting news for you. We lost radio contact with you, as you know. We thought we lost you. The WSA tower saw some weird things. Heathrow Tower had 2 unidentified flying objects. They marked it as UFO. The British base that's 4 miles from here also marked it as UFO. What I feel you were involved in, gentlemen, was a UFO. In the last 5 years, a few things happened. I became ill. Initially, when I first started this, it was more along the lines to get us all together, do a 30-year anniversary, and put some closure to it. Maybe get us together, talk about it, and make some sense out of it. Well, when that started, a lot of things started going crazy. I think most of you are probably aware the binary came up. Okay, ancient aliens got involved. I became sick, and all the issues started with that. One of the things that went on when I got sick was simply my civilian doctor couldn't put two and two together. He couldn't understand why I was having the issues that I was having, especially the overall health I had other than the problems with the heart. So he requested to go back and find out when I initially started with the problems. Well, lo and behold, the problems all started right after our encounter in Rendlesham Forest. Okay? And one of the things that I want to quickly discuss is you couldn't get in the Air Force with a heart problem. It was a disqualifier. Okay? The two things I got lucky to have and re-get were my entry-level physical showed no heart issues, my exit physical in 1988, which was from active going into the reserves with major heart issues. So I couldn't even have gotten in the Air Force with these heart issues. My heart issues started right after the incident. My doctor wanted to take a quick look at what the testing they did, and where they took me for the testing after they identified the issue was to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Okay? At the time, it didn't make a lot of sense, but nowadays it's an important factor involved. But anyway, so started doing some requests. Senator got involved, Senator Kyle. Okay, he had an aide that was very experienced in this type of stuff and really started working hard on it. She went along the lines of the initial response back from the government was, yes, I was in the military, but they had no files on my medical or my personnel records. They weren't where they belonged. So she sent back a letter saying that. They were eventually able to at least get some of my personnel files, but along with that came a letter from her saying that what's going on here is your medical records are classified. So that was the first time classified came up, okay? The next step along the ways was she said you needed to go and file a disability claim. And this was before I got really sick, because if you do file a disability claim, we have more ability to try to get into where your files are and where they're located. Okay, now all this was going on. Along the way also was the citizens hearing, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. What came out of the citizens hearing was two things. Number one, every member on that panel, through Pat, who drafted a letter for them, signed a letter and sent it to the President of the United States. Okay, and the second part was they also sent a letter to the head of the VA at the time asking why my records were classified to release these records and get Jim and I the treatment we deserved. We never got an official acknowledgement back from the White House, but believe it or not, the actual letter to the president ended up back up in my case file with the VA. So somewhere along the line, I'm not saying the man himself was briefed on this, but people within the White House became aware of the case. From that point, Senator Kyle hit a wall, and he was retiring, so he could not get involved any further because he was retiring. He recommended Senator McCain's office to get involved. That's the next person I'd like to thank who's not here today, because Senator McCain took a big risk here. And what I'm telling you is this. He took a risk because he was giving the documents from Senator Kyle's office and some other documents I had, and it clearly showed that we were involved in an incident that had UFO implications. Now, a lot of people wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. He took it on, and his staff took it on, and they started working hard at this. They got me in to see some of the people moving forward with my disability. What happened there was simply the doctor looked at me, and this is when I first found this out, which came up even later, was that I wasn't in the Air Force in '79, so therefore what I said happened couldn't have happened. And I looked at her, and there was no medical records from '79 to '82. So my next question to her was, after I pulled out the file showing it was in the Air Force in '79, and her eyes got real big, was, how can you give me an honest rating if you don't have those records available to you? And she just looked at me and says, that's above my pay grade. That'll have to be decided later on. Okay. But it stopped there. I briefed Senator McCain's staff on it, and they were kind of shocked, but they were still hesitant in this. Well, about 3 months later, I got a letter from the VA denying that the reason why they denied my request for disability was two reasons. One, I wasn't in the Air Force in '79 to '82.
They altered my DD Form 214. They did. The DD Form 214 they produced was showing I didn't come in until 1982. So they broke a law there, okay? Then they also said they had no medical records on me, period. Okay. Well, that really got the attention of Senator McCain's staff. First thing they were able to do was eventually, through a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, was get my DD Form 214 corrected. And that took a lot of effort. But what was funny was the senior staff that was involved out of Phoenix now and in DC said that they did a yeoman's job to get my records or my DD Form 214 changed, but I'd probably never get my medical records. Just don't expect to do that. Okay, right after that, and right after the citizens' hearing, this is the last person I'm going to thank today, and there's going to be some more stuff brought up about him with Linda here in a couple minutes. But basically, a forensic doctor showed up in the scenes, contacted Pat, gave him some information, ended up meeting with me in Sedona, and Pat and his wife were brought out too, did an exam on me, and felt my situation was going critical. He wrote a letter to the Department of Defense and the VA, which got me my treatment expedited, and I got the life-saving service. So I'd like to thank him too, even though he's not here, because without him I wouldn't be alive today. So that's another individual, and she'll be explain that further. Okay. Now, you had 2 senators that felt my files were classified, which is through special operations. A third one also looked in it briefly, Senator Sanders, who was the head of the VA Oversight Committee. He said the same thing. Now we've got some things really rolling behind the scenes. And for time frames, I can't go into it. But what I want to say, it all ended up this way. Senator McCain's staff made it clear to the VA, and some other people did, including Pat, that this wasn't going to go away, and that either they took care of me or that there was going to be an inquiry opened up on what really happened in Rendlesham Forest. Shortly after that, they settled. In January of this year, they sent all the paperwork out, and the announcement was made in Phoenix. But the interesting thing is, folks, they acknowledged that I was injured in the line of duty. That was my whole case. But my medical records are still classified today. Thank you.
We started getting phone calls from members of the public saying that there was some cows wandering around the town. I jumped in the car and I decided to go and investigate. There was just this object completely blocking the road. I started to draw it, and then there's this big white flash.
Alan's next memory is sitting in his car. 40 minutes has passed, which he cannot recall. In addition to this, he is 50 meters further up the road.
It had gone. Whatever it was, it had shook me up, really shook me up.
June 1980, 5 months earlier. Alan Godfrey is called out to a case. A body is found lying on top of a coal pile, next to a busy railway line in broad daylight. Joining him is his colleague, Police Constable Malcolm Magley.
It just seemed a strange place for anybody to die. Became suspicious straight away.
Just looked like he'd been placed there on purpose.
There are no signs of footprints around the body. And he looks as though he's been hastily dressed by someone else.
Where's his shirt gone?
Stranger still, burn marks are found on the body's head and neck.
It looked like somebody'd stuck electrodes on him.
Some of the burns seem to have been treated. A sample of the green ointment covering the burns is sent away for forensic analysis. Alan and Malcolm are stunned by the results.
Weatherby Forensic Science Laboratory said it was no substance known to man.
The ointment is put into a database and compared to 6,500 other substances, but none are a match. The inquest into Adamski's death ends in an open verdict, and the authorities shut the case down.
Following my encounter, some UFO investigators and asked me if I were willing to be hypnotised.
Alan has never been able to account for the 40 minutes lost between him seeing the UFO and regaining consciousness. He hopes that hypnosis, supervised by a psychiatrist, will reveal what happened in this lost time. The hypnotic regression is recorded on camera.
You'll see in a minute that I throw my arms up in front of my eyes because of this bright light. There's a light.
Alan describes being subjected to tests by strange-looking creatures.
I don't like we've got eggs like a lot. You know, these horrible creatures, 3 foot high, whatever, are attaching things to me, and you can see when you watch the tape how upset I am and really frightened.
Alan believes he was abducted and forcibly examined by aliens. To be sure, another psychiatrist repeats the procedure.
I don't know.
Twice. Each time, it's the same story.
To actually relive an event, exactly the same, virtually word for word, on 3 separate occasions, by 2 separate psychiatrists, makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Alan thinks senior police officers have tried to hide the connection between his experience and Adamski's death.
I was ordered not to speak to any members of the press about Mr. Adamski, or in fact my encounter. Now why? Because there's been a cover-up.
After 30 years, all official police records are routinely made public. Both the files relating to Alan's encounter and Adamski's death remain classified.
I'm a police detective in England, having served almost 24 years with the British Transport Police. For the majority of that time, for 20 years, I was a detective. I was dealing at the sharp end of evidential matters. I've been involved in murder, manslaughter, rape, etc., etc. I come to this subject on an evidential basis, and I think that is very necessary in this field. I am here principally to speak on behalf of police officers worldwide who have witnessed UFOs. In January 2002, moving to my police background, I created the Police Reporting UFO Sightings Database. It's commonly referred to as the Proof Force Police Database. You have an information pack with that information. It's basically there for UK police officers to record on and off-duty police sightings. Believe me, over the 11 years of my research, nothing will surprise me what anybody says in this field about what they report. It is truly extraordinary. When I began my research 11 years ago into British police officers, there were approximately 6 cases involving 10 officers. 11 years later, I now have over 425 cases involving over 940 British police officers. This is a significant amount, in my opinion. These sightings have taken place the length and breadth of Britain and have been reported at all times of the day. Whilst I'm not a big lover of statistics because they can be manipulated, I would say that the key statistic for me is that over 70% of these cases are multiple witness officer cases. Therefore, it is significant corroboration to a sighting event that were involved in tracking at least one object over 6 counties of Britain on the night of March the 30th, 31st, 1993. This is referred to as the Cosford incident. Many police officers have observed structured craft of huge size and proportions in close proximity to their ground positions. These craft range in shape and size and dimensions from many tens of feet too many hundreds of feet inside. In October 1984, near Ariath Northolt in Middlesex, a silent black triangular object was seen at low altitude by 2 uniformed police officers on mobile patrol, which they described as being the size of 3 football fields. When I sought to clarify this description of size, they said when they saw it, it was above 3 football fields. So I think that's a pretty good representation of size. This report was made by Police Constable Robin Perry of the Metropolitan Police. On another occasion, in October 1978, 3 uniformed police officers in a rural area of Buckinghamshire observed a huge object, which they described as a size of a football field, which suddenly and silently materialised in front of them in the blink of an eye and at relative close proximity to their position. However, there were also a number of smaller objects flying around the large main object, akin to a mothership kind of scenario, and the larger object then projected a beam down to the ground, which was the width of the football field, which then traversed the ground as if scanning the terrain for several minutes. They watched this event for approximately 5 minutes before suddenly it went off and dematerialised in the blink of an eye. Trumbull County, Ohio, observed multiple circular UFOs from different geographical positions. In one particular sighting, the engine of the police vehicle driven by Sergeant Toby Maliro suddenly put out. When he got out of the vehicle, he looked up and a UFO was directly above him, shining a beam down. As soon as the object moved away, his engine restarted and he attempted a short pursuit. On the 5th of January 2000 in Illinois, multiple police officers observed a large triangular craft that was witnessed from many geographical positions and was sometimes seen in close proximity to their ground locations. Broadly speaking, all the officers involved in both of these incidents described craft that moved in silence, which were able to make incredibly high-speed manoeuvres unlike that of any known aircraft. Finally, in the skies above Belgium between 1989 and 1991, hundreds of police officers observed large triangular objects all over the country. Many of these sightings involved multiple police officer witnesses and were frequently seen at close proximity to their ground locations.
It was 20 years ago, it's a long time, 1978 when I was a police officer. I actually had a confrontation with one of these things when I was a working police officer, and I was on duty one night in 78 when me and a colleague actually had a confrontation with one of these things.
Where was this?
This was commonly near Skipton in North Yorkshire, and I was driving a police car, he was the observer, and we came round a bend in a country lane and there was this thing sitting in the air in front of us, and it was absolutely stunning to see. It was a huge disc, about 100 feet in diameter, had a dome on the top of it, with what appeared to be portals, darkened portals around the dome. It had a skirting around the underside and coloured flashing lights which were flashing on and off, almost like a neon sign effect. And there was 3 large globes or balls protruding from the underside. They were spaced evenly on the underside. I stopped the car and we got out. There was a very, very heavy static had come on the police car radio at that time. I don't know the cause of it. It may have been because of this thing was there, but it wouldn't be right to jump to conclusion. But this static suddenly set up on the radio, and I got out of the car, both of us did, and we stood there sort of open mouth looking at this thing as it slowly moved away from us. But despite its enormous size, there was no sound coming from the damn thing. The only sound that we heard at that time was where it was displaced in the air when it started to move away from us. And the thing was, though, it was absolutely beautiful to look at it. I couldn't help remembering at the time, thinking, what kind of engineers put something like this together? Because it was absolutely extraordinary, it was. And that's what got me into the thing, because I was determined I was going to find out I mean, I'd not long been out of the RAF, and my last postings, I'd been on Air Force bases where they were testing the very latest technology in aircraft. And at that time, the aircraft of the time, which were under test, were the Lightning, because it was a Lightning station where I was on, and the Canberra. And that was our most advanced technology at the time. They were only testing them at that time, they test flying them. Now this thing was years and years and years ahead of anything like that.
There are people probably watching this interview and wondering, is this man for real? Are UFOs real? If you could look at that person right now, what would you say?
I would say, first of all, seek and you will find. But don't just condemn this subject without investigating it. It's very, very easy to turn around and condemn things just off the top of your head. We've put a lot of time and a lot of years into this investigation, and I can assure you, without any question of a doubt, that aliens are here, aliens have been here for a long time, and aliens are in contact with various elements of the military and other countries, diplomats. It wouldn't be prudent to me to say any more at this time, but if you can believe me if you wish. If you don't believe me, well, that's entirely up to you.
Of course flying saucers are real, and they are interplanetary. Air Chief Marshal Lord Dowding.
Why do you say that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over our heads?
Well, because I know that they are. They've been, as a matter of fact, they've been visiting our planet for thousands of years. And one of the cases that would interest you most, if you give me 2 or 3 minutes to answer, is during the Cold War, 1961, there were about 50 UFOs in formation flying south from Russia to across Europe. And the Supreme Allied Commander was very concerned and about ready to press the panic button when they turned around and went back over the North Pole. So they decided to do an investigation, and they investigated for 3 years, and they decided that with absolute certainty that 4 different species at least, had been visiting this planet for thousands of years. And they've been authenticated, the sightings have been authenticated by more than one witness, and also by radar, and they have landed in various places around the world, including Russia. There's a famous case there, I can't remember the name of the place, but it was widely reported at the time. A man wrote a book about it, and then the French bought the book rights so that it wouldn't be circulated around. There's just so much evidence. If anybody will take the time off to do a little bit of research and study.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief.
Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Chaim Eshed is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years. Not immigrants, but extraterrestrials. He has called them the Galactic Federation of Aliens, and he says President Trump is aware of the existence of these aliens and had been on the verge of revealing their secrets, he claims, but was asked not to do so by the Federation in order to prevent what he calls mass hysteria. Well, the retired general says the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready. Now, this former head of a branch of Israel's defense ministry is 87. He was very well respected. And he said all this in an interview with an Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, but it's really taken off after parts of it were published in English by the Jerusalem Post today. He says he's come forward now in the hope that his news will be accepted as true. He notes that if he'd made these claims 5 years ago, he would have been hospitalized, but now he says, I've got nothing to lose. Well, so far, President Trump has not tweeted about this, though remember a year ago he did set up the Space Force as the 5th branch of the US Armed Forces.
Going to be a lot of things happening in space, because space is the world's newest warfighting domain. Amid grave threats to our national And we're leading, but we're not leading by enough, but very shortly we'll be leading by a lot. The Space Force will help us deter aggression and control the ultimate high ground. With today's signing, I will proudly appoint General J. Raymond, the first Chief of Space Operations, and he will become the very first member of the Space Force, and he will be on the Joint Chiefs. He will be on the Joint Chiefs, which are now expanding by one position. That's a very powerful position. So, General Raymond, congratulations, and thank you for everything you've done.
UFOs? Any UFOs?
Certainly asked about it.
And?
Can't tell you. Sorry.
When it comes to aliens, there's some things I just can't tell you on air. But what is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is.
President Obama says that there is footage and records of objects in the skies, these unidentified aerial phenomenon, and he says we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think that it is?
I would ask him again. Thank you. Come on, boss, let's go.
We have indeed been contacted, perhaps even visited, by extraterrestrial beings. And the U.S. government, in collusion with the other national powers of the Earth, is determined to keep this information from the general public. Victor Marchetti, former special assistant to the executive director of the CIA.
Last night over Oahu caught the attention of many people. Howard Deshefsky joins us with more. Howard?
Joe, that's the question. What was it? What did people see? We did receive a lot of reports via our reported feature on our website. A lot of viewers wondering what those lights were over West Oahu. Check out this video from one of our viewers, Mash Hatai. He said he woke up at about 2:30 this morning, get a drink of water, and this is what he saw in the sky. Certainly caught his eye. He took the video from Kaka'ako and thinks the lights were over Central or West Oahu, hard to tell from his vantage point. As you can see, the two bright lights, and then slowly a third light appears. Hatai believes he saw about 8 to 10 of the lights total. He says he believes, at least he thinks, they're probably flares.
It looks like flares. Definitely could have been taken as something more mysterious. But yeah, definitely probably just flares, military flares. Definitely really unusual to see. So they were super bright. I guess I couldn't really get the full gist of it with my camera since it was so far away, but it was really, really bright. I mean, I looked out my lanai and it was literally the first thing I saw.
There's a new video this morning that some say may be proof we're not alone in the universe. A UFO in the form of a bright light is seen descending over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The video is said to be taken over the weekend. Then suddenly the light shoots up into the sky. There you see it. Another video from a different angle appears to show the light doing the same thing. Those clips have gone viral now.
זה יורד למטה.
These lights first appeared in the sky. To this day, nobody really knows what they were or where they came from.
Do you remember the flood of phone calls coming into the newsroom? What is that? There's something in the sky.
This is 21 years of studying the data, and it still cannot be explained or denied. Elected official who came forward to ask for a reenactment, which happened 3 years after the mass sighting. 3 Air National Guards tried to reenact the Phoenix Lights and failed. And DOD just came forward in December. A New York Times article divulged that Harry Reid actually requested a study. They are studying it now at the Pentagon, and it was funded $22 million. And just like myself, I mean, they don't know what these things were, but they know that they are, and they're far advanced from what we have. Even our past former governor, Symington, who mocked the sighting in '97, came forward after the 10th anniversary to reveal bravely that he actually saw one of these mile-wide craft and larger, and that it was otherworldly. And he's a pilot, an award-winning Air Force officer.
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking. And I'm not sure about the date. You've got a better memory
March
for the
13th.
dates than I do. Yeah.
But there was no, like the Clinton day, no.
No. No. I was on a strict diet. No, I'm serious. I'm serious now. That it was unquestionably it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
Right. Doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, and a pilot. Got a lot of hours flying, so it was pretty breathtaking. And I'll never forget. I snuck out to see it, without DPS, which I'm not supposed to be driving my own car and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, but I told Ann what I was doing. I was going to go up to Squaw Peak and see what everybody was, clamoring about. And when I walked in the front door, she looked at me, and I was apparently normally I'm fair-complected and pale anyway, right? And she said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "she looked like a ghost. What did you see?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what I saw, but it was really something, and I'm not going to talk about it." And
wow.
So
Did it frighten you?
No, I think I was kind of in awe, really,
How big?
Bigger than anything I've ever seen in the sky.
Like an aircraft carrier in the sky?
Yeah. Something like that, yeah. And it was hard to define because of the light in terms of the size, but it was absolutely silent and had sort of eerie embedded lights, and, so that's what I saw.
This one, a UFO mystery at one of the nation's busiest airports. Several pilots, apparently, and United Airlines workers at Chicago's O'Hare swear they saw one, a UFO. They say it hovered over a terminal without lights before shooting straight up right through the clouds last fall.
O'Hare Tower, this is Dave.
Hey, Dave, it's Sue from United Tower.
Hey, Sue.
Hey, did you see a flying disc out by C-17?
Oh, don't even start, Sue.
No,
You're seeing flying discs.
well, that's what the pilot and the ramp guys are telling us. The C-17, they saw some flying disc above it. We can't see above us.
Come on, Sue.
You didn't see it, right?
You guys been celebrating the holidays already on there or what? You having a Christmas party today? I have not seen anything, Sue. And if I did, I wouldn't admit to it. No, I have not seen any flying disc at gate C-17. Unless you get a new aircraft you're bringing out today that we don't know about. No, I have not seen anything, Sue.
Joe, which is not his real name, is one of several airport workers, some of whom have talked to the Chicago Tribune, who say they saw a saucer-shaped UFO hovering just beneath the clouds at the airport. He's the first to go on camera to talk about it since this happened several weeks ago. He wants to remain anonymous.
But you're sure it was some kind of object that normally would not be above O'Hare Airport?
I've been at O'Hare for quite some time, and let's just say that I've never seen an object in my time there that looked like this.
Other witnesses told an organization called the National UFO Reporting Center that the object eventually shot straight up in the sky at a great rate of speed.
It looked like literally someone had poked a hole in the clouds.
A spokesperson for United Airlines says, "We are aware of what the employees said they saw, but this is not something United would investigate. Talk to the FAA," says the airline. The TSA and the Chicago Department of Aviation also told us to talk to the FAA. So we did. And an FAA spokesperson told us we, too, don't have the power to investigate.
An American Airlines flight from Kentucky to Phoenix encountered an unusual object. Here's the pilot talking to air traffic control. Have a listen.
Have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object. It almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.
Now, what's interesting about this, American Airlines confirmed that audio as authentic and then referred all media questions to the FBI. Erica, what's going on here? What did he see out there?
What did he see?
Shannon Speedway 94.
Go ahead.
Is there any military traffic you got right now?
Okay, sir, there's nothing showing on either primary or secondary.
Okay, it was moving so fast, in fact, you can no longer see it, but yes, thank you.
Along the side here?
Yes. Get to come up on our left-hand side and then rapidly veer to the north. Being so bright light and then it just disappeared at a very high speed. We were just wondering. We didn't think it was a likely collision course, we're just wondering what that could have been.
Meteor or another object making some kind of re-entry. Appears to be multiple objects following the same sort of trajectory. Very bright from where we were.
Okay, that's copied. And is there a direction it was going in or anything? Right, it's copied, thank you.
The Virgin 76 also saw that in our 11 o'clock position, two bright lights.
Roger, that's copied, thank you.
Glad it wasn't just me? No, yeah, very interesting that one. Virgin 76, I saw two bright lights, 11 o'clock, seem to back over to the right and then climb away at speed, at least from our perspective.
Okay, we're passing that on there, thank you.
Speedbird 94, Shannon. 94, go ahead. Okay, just so you know that other aircraft in the air have also reported the same thing, so we're going to have a look and see. The speed is astronomical, it's like Mach 2 or something. Roger, okay, thank you.
Now to new developments in that crisis at a major international airport. This morning, the search is still on for whoever flew drones around Gatwick's airfield outside of London, shutting it down for more than a day, leading to 760 flight cancellations, affecting more than 100,000 travelers. ABC's James Longman has the latest.
A mysterious drone buzzing over the airfield at London's Gatwick Airport had forced authorities to halt all flights in and out of the airport. Passengers stranded in the terminal, some for over 36 hours, while outside helicopters circled above and police armed with long rifles hunted for the mystery pilot, the British government authorising the military to step in.
3 drones shouldn't be a problem for them. Shouldn't bring down an airport, a big international airport like this, to be honest with you.
How would you describe the situation inside?
Havoc.
There's people crying in there. There's people laying down, sleeping. Kids crying. People shouting. They don't know where flights are gonna start going again. They don't know anything.
760 flights were due to take off today, but at gate after gate it was the same story. Planes grounded and a runway where the only aircraft moving was a police helicopter. This mobile phone footage purportedly shows the drone flying above Gatwick this afternoon.
Over your head.
Police snipers and dozens of officers have been deployed to try and spot where it's being operated from. Terrorism has been ruled out, but the army is now being called in to assist the police.
Military-grade equipment has been drafted in to defend the airport. Drone detecting devices and jammers are being used to create a supposedly impenetrable electronic shield.
UK laws don't normally allow this sort of technology to be used.
3 drones shouldn't be a problem for them. Shouldn't bring down an airport, a big international airport like this.
Two fighter jets have apparently been filmed chasing a UFO along the M5 in the West Midlands. The video was captured by an unknown cameraman at a service station car park near Birmingham, and it's created a sizable truth or hoax controversy on the web. So what do you think? Nick Pope worked for the MOD studying reported UFO sightings for 21 years. Earlier he told me what he made of the footage. The MOD have refused to comment on this, even to say that it's a fake. Why do you think that is?
Well, that's the most interesting part of this whole story, I think.
Jets are scrambled if there's a potential threat. Could this be a security breach?
Jets do get scrambled, and sometimes jets do get scrambled in response to UFO sightings.
I told you I saw something the other day.
Hey.
They're definitely like drones.
Yeah, they are, look. Hey, come out the way so I can get in there.
Right.
They're like got a hole in the middle of them.
Yeah. It's definitely got to be a drone.
Look, there's loads of them. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, look, you've got those like really small ones as well.
Oh, that is weird. I'm serious. That is. Look.
There's 5 up there.
There's 4.
There's 5. There's 5.
Oh yeah, there is 5. Yeah. Can you see the hole in them? There's like a hole in the middle of them.
Yeah.
I need to film them properly. Actually, look. Sounds like a deal. What's going on here?
Do you remember that one that we saw?
I can't even see them on here no more. Why can't I see them on here no more? There they are. Look, they're like flipping round. Oh my God.
What the hell is that? Looks like they're coming closer anyway.
Plus, honestly, I have to get out of the garage before Morgan takes it sledding.
Oh, it's so annoying. I can't get. I'm going to try and zoom in even more.
I have no idea. But we saw one the other day, no word of a lie, Andy. It was about there, and it was one on its own. But the
I thought it was a seagull, didn't I?
We are good. Yeah, and I said to you,
see it? Did you see the middle of it? It's like they got a hole in the middle of it.
Yeah. They just like hover.
That is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
They're floating away.
Yeah, but can you see they've got a hole in the middle of them? Like when they flip round, they got a hollow.
The other two are well high up.
A hollow hole.
You've got some aliens kind
August 2000, the skies above Brighton. A strange light is encountered by a police helicopter crew.
My name's John Tickner. I was a policeman until just a few weeks ago when I retired from Sussex Police, where I've been for 30 years. The last 12 years of my service was on the air support unit, working on the police and ambulance helicopter. The first thing that happened was, in fact, Sean, the paramedic, he was sat in the right-hand rear seat, looking out the window, and he was the first one to see just a light.
As soon as I saw it, I notified the pilot so that he was aware of it, so he could see it in case we needed to get out of the way, and also if he could talk to the pilot and see why they were in our area and why they were flying so low. We then flew around and tried to identify it as soon as we could.
But the helicopter pilot was unable to open communications with the other vehicle. Concern grew for whether the object was a danger or not.
So I looked out of the window initially and saw the light, just so I could work out where to take the camera, and then brought the camera around onto it to see what the thermal image picture would give me.
It didn't have the normal, the tail lights and the flashing lights that you would sort of normally see on an aircraft. So we didn't actually know what it was.
With the camera trained on the object, the mystery would surely be solved.
What I was expecting to see was the shape of an aircraft, because that's what we normally see. If we can't work out what the lights are or where they are or where they're going, then put it on the thermal image camera, and then you get a lovely silhouette of the aircraft or the helicopter, and you can actually work out what it is usually. But on this occasion, I found it on the camera, brought the camera around onto it, and it was a cylinder. It's difficult to say how big it was.
It's very difficult at night time in the dark to judge distances and size of things, and all we could see was this light, so didn't have a clue how big it was. Initially, it did give the impression of moving quite quickly and away from us. So we were kind of moving around. You can actually see that on the video footage, that it does seem to be, we do seem to be chasing it around. And that was quite odd to start with, that it gave the impression it was moving very fast.
We had sight of it, and either it passed us or we passed it. It went down the starboard side of our aircraft. It is very unusual to have anything at that particular height over Brighton, over any town or city. That's general aviation is not permitted that low. Commercial aviation is many thousands of feet higher than that. Most kites and balloons and things are well below it. It's an area where we're normally on our own at that height, so that's, I suppose, what took us a little bit by surprise.
We then flew round, and it seemed to it gave the impression of moving away from us, and it gave the impression that we were trying to have to chase round to catch it up.
The shape was something that I just wanted to try and work out what it was. Working most of the time with the thermal image camera, you like to think you get quite good. I mean, I can't tell you whether it's a Boeing 737 or an Airbus or something, but you can see very clearly, two engines and an aircraft. You can see the military helicopters that are sometimes around at low level. That's the only other thing that was going through my mind, that it might have been. But you can see the shape of the helicopter, the rotors going around, the heat from the jet exhaust, all the things you could see. What I could see here was just one single light in a daylight camera, and this cylinder shape in the night camera. And it's trying to put those two together just to make some logical sense of what we were seeing.
It was something so unique to them, when bear in mind they're in the air all the time and they're following this, that and the other, that they perceived it as being extremely strange. When you see it on the film, it looks extremely bizarre. It's an unusual shape. It quite clearly is there, and it quite clearly gets quite close to their helicopter. It was corroborated by the other people in the helicopter. It's a very puzzling case. When you look at footage, I'm very, very cautious to say whether something's a UFO or not as such, i.e. a genuine, supposedly ET. Because it's very difficult to verify, and you should really only make informed judgments when the analysis has been made. Yet it looks very unusual, and I think in this case was treated quite rightly as an unidentified aerial object, which it was.
Apollo 11 wasn't alone in space.
There was something out there that was close enough to be observed, and what could it be?
Traveling alongside Apollo 11 was a mysterious object like this one, filmed on a later mission. If it wasn't part of their own rocket, it could only be one thing: a UFO.
Mike decided he thought he could see it in the telescope, and he was able to do that. And when it was in one position, that it had a series of ellipses. But when you made it real sharp, it was sort of L-shaped. Now, obviously, the three of us were not going to blurt out, "Hey, Houston, we got something moving alongside of us, and we don't know what it is. Can you tell us what it is?" We weren't about to do that, because we know that those transmissions would be heard by all sorts of people, and who knows what somebody would have demanded that we turn back because of aliens or whatever the reason is. So we didn't do that, but we did decide we just cautiously ask Houston, how far away was the S4B?
Unaware of the drama unfolding in space, Mission Control radioed the position back to Apollo 11.
Apollo 11, Houston, the S4B is about 6,000 nautical miles from you now, over.
And a few moments later, they came back and said something like it was 6,000 miles away because of the maneuver. So we really didn't think we were looking at something that far away. So we decided that after a while of watching it, it was time to go to sleep and not to talk about it anymore until we came back and debriefing.
We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there?
During my flight on Gemini 4 in 1965, I saw an object in space fairly close to our spacecraft that I could not identify. It looked to me like maybe the upper stage of another rocket. I tried to take some pictures of it, but unfortunately the pictures did not come out properly. We never were able to identify what it was, and all of our ground radar tracking data indicated that there shouldn't have been another object anywhere near us at the time.
This morning, a potential close call caught on camera. A mysterious object captured on tape flying very close to the SpaceX Crew Dragon with 4 astronauts on board.
Mission and liftoff.
Take a look at this video. Just 12 minutes after the astronauts left planet Earth Friday morning, part of the Falcon 9 rocket separates from the Dragon. That's when some kind of object flies between the two. Take a closer look in slow motion. But what exactly was that object seen early in the flight? This morning, no official confirmation on what it was.
For him, it began in 1951 while flying in Europe for the U.S. Air Force. There, Cooper and other pilots witnessed an incident that has never been officially explained. A vast armada of UFOs flying in formation at extremely high altitudes.
I've read about this incident you had in 1951, and you said you saw literally hundreds of unidentifiable flying objects.
Yes, they were flying quite high. How high we couldn't tell because we couldn't get anywhere near their altitude. But they were either very large craft way up or smaller craft still well above what we could get to.
For a day and a half, all of this happened. But then no one wanted to talk about it.
Well, we sent a report forward on it, and the answer that finally came back months later was they were probably high-flying seed pods, which didn't sound very logical.
In 1951, you couldn't even get close to the things that were flying overhead. You or anyone else that was flying.
They were faster, higher.
6 years later, Cooper again encountered a UFO while supervising flight testing at Edwards Air Force Base. His military camera crew actually filmed an unidentified saucer-shaped object landing near the site.
As they were sitting there filming, a little saucer came from, I say little saucer, it was a saucer, came flying over their heads, put down 3 little landing gear and landed right out on the dry lake bed. And they picked up their cameras and started over toward it, filming as they went. And when they got in fairly close to it, it lifted up, put the gear back in the wheel wells, tipped up, and took off at a great rate of speed. And so they came into my office and told me what had happened, and I sent them over to develop the film. And then had to go through all the proper regulations of reporting this. And we wound up having to send the film forward to Washington in the base jet airplane. And I don't know whether anyone's ever seen it since.
Years later, Cooper approached the United Nations with a proposal for a committee that would explore the UFO phenomenon.
All right, now tell me about the letter to the UN.
Well, the letter to the UN was in conjunction with a meeting that I had with Kurt Waldheim and the Security Council of the UN to try to encourage the UN to establish a committee to start comparing notes and data and information and to really look into all of this from an unbiased, neutral point of view.
Here's a quote from your letter. I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets
I'm Richard Southern. Happy Friday. What's lurking up there in the sky? Here's a really interesting story. A Russian cosmonaut who is currently up there on the International Space Station right now has suggested he may have filmed a UFO in orbit. I want to show you the video he posted. This happened when he was filming the Aurora Borealis. He was doing a time lapse. Just into the time lapse, there's a few objects that appear. We're going to freeze it for you so you can get a good look at it. 5 objects appear flying alongside each other with the same distance in between them. Ivan Wagner, the cosmonaut in question, tweeted, quote, "What do you think these are? Meteorites, satellites, or ... He suggested they may have been, quote, space guests. Whatever they were obviously arranged in a clear, angled line. The cosmonaut says he sent his video to the authorities in Russia for further evaluation.